A single father named Jake Martinez had sold his beloved 2018 Harley-Davidson Street Glide to cover medical costs for his 3-year-old son Tommy, who was battling terminal cancer. The $18,000 from the sale was already earmarked for an experimental treatment at MD Anderson in Houston, their last real hope after local doctors gave up and insurance denied coverage. 6 months earlier, Tommy had been a healthy kid chasing butterflies in the backyard while the gleaming black Harley sat in the garage. Jake had bought it with a work bonus and promised his late wife Maria they'd teach Tommy to ride one day. Maria used to ride behind him on long Sunday cruises through Michigan backroads. After she died of cancer 2 years ago, the bike became one of the few remaining pieces of that life. Selling it felt like burying another part of his family, but Tommy's breathing grew more labored each night, machines beeping beside his Spider-Man sheets, and Jake had no choice. 3 days after the sale, the buyer, a quiet man named Marcus Thompson, showed up exactly on time in a pickup. He inspected the Harley with real appreciation, not haggling, and paid in crisp cash. When Marcus asked why Jake was selling, the story spilled out: the diagnosis, failed treatments, insurance denials, the Houston trial that might save Tommy if they could just afford it. Marcus listened silently, then shook Jake's hand and said simply, "Your boy's lucky to have a father like you." He promised to treat the bike right and rode away. What Jake didn't know was that Marcus was a prospect with the local Hells Angels chapter. That same night at the clubhouse, Marcus told the story over beers: a father who'd sacrificed his prized ride to fight for his dying son. The room went quiet. Hardened riders, men who'd seen violence, loss, and long highways, nodded, each thinking of their own kids. The tale spread fast. Phone calls went out to other chapters. Posts circulated in riding groups across Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. Within 48 hours, what started as one man's quiet sacrifice turned into a regional call to action. Poker runs were thrown together, charity rides organized, donations collected from weekend warriors, independent riders, shop owners, and entire motorcycle clubs. Money poured in faster than anyone expected. By Friday, the fund had surpassed the $18,000 Jake received, and kept growing, enough to cover not just the Houston treatment but years of follow-up care. Saturday morning, a deep rumble rolled through Jake's quiet suburban street. Dozens of motorcycles appeared, led by Marcus riding Jake's own black Street Glide back into the driveway where it belonged. Hells Angels formed the core, Death's Head patches gleaming, but they were joined by every kind of rider: cruisers, sport bikes, custom builds, veterans, young guys, women on their own machines. The convoy stretched down the block. Bull Richardson, a massive Hells Angels veteran, stepped forward first. "Heard you might need some help with your boy," he said, voice rough but warm. He handed Jake a thick envelope. More riders followed, pressing cash, checks, and envelopes into his hands. "This isn't charity," Bull explained over the idling engines. "This is family taking care of family. You showed us what real love looks like. We wanted to back you up." Jake stood stunned, Tommy clinging to his neck, wide-eyed at the sea of leather and chrome. Neighbors watched from porches, including Mrs. Henderson, who'd once whispered about Jake's irresponsible sale. Now she stared in silence. Tommy reached toward the familiar Harley, small fingers tracing the tank in wonder. The riders watched quietly as father and son reunited with the bike. Throughout the afternoon, Tommy, stronger than he'd been in weeks, moved from rider to rider, asking about engines and handlebars. Bikers answered patiently, treating him like their own grandkid. The medical gear sat forgotten inside. Food appeared: burgers, drinks, cookies from the same judgmental neighbor. The driveway turned into an impromptu block party, patches mixing with suburban lawns. Jake moved through it like a dream, shaking hands with strangers who felt like brothers. As the sun dropped, Bull sat beside Jake on the steps while Tommy dozed in his lap. 23 years riding, Bull said. Never seen anything organized this fast. Your story hit different. Reminded us why we ride. Freedom, family, knowing we're not alone out there. Tommy stirred. Daddy, when I get better, can we ride to see these people again? Jake nodded, throat too tight to speak. As evening fell, engines fired up one by one. Riders said quiet goodbyes, promised to stay in touch, and made sure Jake had everything he needed. Marcus was last. He pressed the Harley keys back into Jake's palm. "Take care of that boy. And when he's ready, teach him motorcycles aren't just machines, they're about the family we find on the road." The street went quiet again, but everything had changed. The empty driveway that once meant loss now held the Harley, symbol of a community that answered when it mattered most. Tommy's treatment was funded. Hope wasn't just possible, it was riding in with people who proved that family isn't always blood, and miracles sometimes arrive on two wheels.